Good evening, friends. The third Monday of the month, and I'd like to welcome you to the bird study group meeting of the Hamilton Naturalists Club. If we haven't met, my name is Jackson Hudecki, and I'm the bird study group director for the HNC. And joining us is a very special guest who can actually turn their camera off for a few more minutes if you want to, only because I've got a few things to share before I get to you. That was your sneak peek into our special guest tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Always pleased to have people here. Of course, we're in some very unusual times, and we are broadcasting from our houses. So I'm here in the Strathcona neighborhood of Hamilton. So wherever you are in the world, good evening, good morning. Thanks for joining us. We do this once a month, and this is the third installment of this year's session. So again, happy to have you here. The HNC would like to recognize the long history of First Nations and Métis people in the province of Ontario and pay respects to the Six Nations of the Grand River Territory and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the holder of the treaty with the Crown for the lands that the HNC stewards. I'm speaking to you today from the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat nations. And I'd again like to welcome you to the bird study group meeting. So if you're new to this at all, this is a subsection of the Hamilton Naturalist Club where we try and just unite birders of every skill level. No matter where you are in your journey, you are here, and we want to just continue the topic of birds and birding and conservation throughout all the months of the year. I guess save for the summertime, because everyone still needs a break. But regardless, for 9 to 10 months of the year, we like to bring you these meetings. The Naturalist Club also brings meetings where it's kind of a general meeting, so that occurs on the second Monday of every month. But this one is just specifically about birds. So we just like to keep the conversations going all the time. Because once you kind of get bitten by the birding bug, you can literally talk about birds all day long. So these programs start at 7:30. They go until about 9 o'clock. Typically, we give some introductions and talk about some events and some things coming up before getting to our special guests, which ranges anywhere from 35 minutes to an hour, with some Q&A in the mix. There is a chat function, so we encourage you to use the chat function to communicate. Make sure when you want to communicate, click to and then click everybody, not just hosts and panelists, unless you have something specifically for just the hosts and the panelists. Otherwise, if you want to chat with everybody, click everyone and feel free to share anything you'd like in there. Don't be shy. At any time through the meeting tonight, you can put questions specifically for our guests in the Q&A that you want answered. I will be checking both, so feel free to put questions anywhere. In having conversations recently with folks, and this is something that seems kind of easy for a cisgendered white guy, that nature and the environment is a spot where so many communities do intersect. And not only are there so many important people observing wildlife, there are lots of organizations, and we're all doing it for the greater good. So again, super grateful that you're here and you're out there and you're observing birds wherever you are in the world, because there are birds to be found. It is November, and there are some seriously exciting birds occurring in the Hamilton study area, including the photograph here. So Rob Dobis found a Harris's sparrow. So this is Doug Ward's photograph. So there is much discussion happening around this bird occurring in the Hamilton study area, kind of in the Dundas area. If you're looking for specific locations, I'm sure you can find them out there, but on the Ontario Birds Discord page, I know people have shared the specific location. That shouldn't say razor bills, just say razor bills, because there have been multiple razor bills spotted since our last bird study group meeting, as well as multiple sightings of red-headed woodpeckers. And again, there should be an S there, because there has been one occurring that was found a couple weeks ago at Rock Chapel, and it is now being found on Unsworth Avenue kind of populating the Hidden Valley Park Trail, the Royal Botanical Gardens, Creekside Walk entrance, and a private property home. So definitely need to check out Northern Goshawk, Golden Eagle, Black-legged Kittiwake, and other Jaegers. Sedgwick continues to be a trap for birds. I know Cheryl Edgecombe reported some birds there today, including some warblers and a blue-gray gnatcatcher, which is pretty cool. But let us know what you're seeing. Share in the chat birds that are exciting you these days, something new you've seen, a lifer, something that has brought you some joy. And how was the Alan Wormington fall bird count for you? The patch that I had with a couple of pals, Connor and Jess, we walked kind of the Dundurn Castle patch out to the high level bridge and through the Hamilton Cemetery, and we didn't turn up a ton of birds. We found it to be pretty quiet, and Bill Lamond, who was the coordinator for that, kind of suggested it was quiet in a few spots for some birders. Although I think the Iroquois Heights crew had like 42 species. They had a pretty great day. So what was your bird count like last weekend? Let us know. The chat is currently empty. That is fine. Feel free to use it. So upcoming events. So there's not a ton going on right now. COVID is still looming over us, so everyone's trying to be as careful as possible. But when it comes to birding, we know that the pipits are birding regularly, so every Sunday at 8 a.m. So you can see colleen+2@gmail.com is who to reach out to if you're looking to get some birding done on Sunday mornings. If you're not sure about it, whether or not you want to do that, you can join the virtual birding walk, which occurs Tuesdays at 7 p.m. And that's something that's very, very informal, similar. It's very informal, so you could be joining that on Tuesday evenings just to have a chat about birds. And this is something for birders of again, every skill level. So, but especially if you are new. So I encourage you to check out the pipits. And I was chatting with Rob Porter, who is coordinating the Christmas bird count. So that's coming up. Sunday, December 26th is the Hamilton Christmas bird count. The Peachtree, which is kind of the Grimsby, Beamsville area bird count, is on Sunday, January 2nd. And there is a survey that if it doesn't go in soon to the chat, I'll put it in when I'm done sharing my screen. So there's a new Flamborough count that is to be determined as to what day that will be, but look forward to that. There's a few counts for you out there to get yourself involved and to contribute to citizen science beyond what you're doing birding and contributing to eBird already. And if you're not doing that, that's okay too. Now, this is a bit of a long-winded one, so just bear with me for a sec, because I received an email from Doug Tozer from Birds Canada about and I need to minimize a couple screens here just so I can see this message. Okay, so the Great Lakes Sea Duck Age Ratio Project. So this is for all of our photographer friends who are tuning in. So a research student from State University of New York, Brockport, is seeking assistance from waterfowl photographers from the Great Lake regions on his sea duck project aimed at estimating breeding productivity through determining adult to juvenile ratios. The study started on the East Coast, but there's a lot of interest in getting a representative sample from the Great Lakes for those sea ducks that frequent those inland lakes. So they're looking for pictures, your pictures, and there's a kind of a specific way to do this, which I'll mention in the next couple of slides. This is the student's email contact information, which I can share with you after the fact, and I think we're going to include this on a newsletter at some point. So sea ducks are a poorly understood group of waterfowl species. Recent population modeling work has identified a few demographic parameters that are most important to understanding the harvest potential of these species and improve management. One of the most pressing parameters to estimate is annual fecundity, or what proportion of the population each year is composed of juvenile birds. Photos of sea ducks taken during the winter can be used to assign birds to age and sex classes. The age ratio of the populations each year can be estimated after each bird is assigned. Photos of the ducks can be taken in the field, and experts can identify the species, age, and sex of the birds at a later date, so you don't need to do that. So what they're looking for is from October 15th to December 15th. So we still have a month to go from tonight when you're hearing about it. And they're specifically looking for photos of black scoters, surf scoters, white-winged scoters, and long-tailed ducks specifically. 10 usable photos of each species from each state during the survey window. That part's not necessary to you. They want you to include a little spreadsheet. So if you take the photo and can include just time, date, location of what you saw. They want to make sure that when using multi-shot function, your camera, select the photo that best represents the flock in terms of composition, resolution at the photographer's discretion. By flock, I think they also mean individual. Yeah, so that's something to keep in mind. And I know that's kind of, there's a lot of information on these slides, a lot of words. So basically pictures of black scoters, surf scoters, white-winged scoters, and long-tailed ducks are needed for this project. If you are capable of taking these pictures and you want to contribute to this project, which sounds like a great thing in order to conserve certain populations, then yeah, you put those camera skills to great work. My audio isn't very clear, which is unfortunate. Not sure why that could be, and hopefully that's not the case for everybody, but if it is, please let me know. I'm almost done talking for what it's worth. Okay, so if you are looking for birding resources, there's a few out there. We know that social media is full of information, and I'm trying to encourage some birders to join Discord, because that's a spot where a lot of conversation is occurring, both with Ontario Birds and with the Hamilton Naturalist Club. And again, there's some local birding groups, and when I started populating this, I thought there might be a few other groups out there, and I can't think of more than what's here, because I know the Conservation Authority, and not just a birding club with Royal Botanical Gardens, Conservation Halton, like I know that there's these programs that occur. So if you know of others, let me know and I can add them here, because we want people to continue to be birding. Of course, if you're not a member of the Hamilton Naturalist Club, it's always advised to do so to help support the cause and to support the staff and to support the properties and to just be part of something super cool. I mean, if you're a member, you know. And if you're not, that's okay too. But again, we encourage you to join. And if you're interested in volunteering, reach out to our volunteer director, volunteer@hamiltonnature.org. We are still looking to kind of fill a couple positions. So the board itself has gone under a transition. Bill Lamond is now the current president. Rachel Jones is the vice president. So we filled some spots, and we're still looking for some help with communications and some help with the Wood Duck magazine. So always open to folks out there who want to help contribute. And even if it's in a part-time capacity, just reach out to Mike, volunteer@hamiltonnature.org, and just let him know what you are capable of. That being said, as well, with these bird study group meetings, if you have a survey, if you have a petition, if you have an event, a program, a party, an outing, anything you want promoted, let the bird study group presentations be a source to just get information out there. I'd love for this to continue to be a welcoming and an inclusive group for people, especially beginners, but for everybody. We want to just keep this moving forward. So you can send anything to me, birdstudygroup@hamiltonnature.org. Send me a private message here, whatever you'd like. Always looking to help promote some stuff. That being said, this is both wonderful and wonderfully terrifying photograph of a wild turkey. I don't think I've never seen a picture like this in my life, and I needed to just make this the biggest picture possible for tonight, because our December speaker is Jen Basie, coming to us from Trent University, and she's going to be speaking to us about wild turkeys, a year in the life. So wild turkeys are a common sight in many Ontario landscapes. This was not always the case. They were hunted to extinction in Ontario in the early 1900s and reintroduced into the province. And it's growing rapidly. So these turkeys stay in Ontario year round. And Jen, who's again a PhD candidate at Trent University, will be discussing the history of wild turkeys in Ontario, how turkey behavior changes throughout the year, and what this means for her research. So a really interesting topic. And yeah, like I know I've been seeing more wild turkey around, so this would be neat to be a part of. So we'd love for you to join us a month from now on Monday, December 13th for that talk. And the January session is the Canadian, I should have written this down. It's not TWF. So a couple years ago, my cousin Jane Hudecki spoke to the bird study group, and she has since she is now married and goes by Jane Spiro. So she's the conservation breeding coordinator of the Eastern Loggerhead Shrike recovery team for the Wildlife Preservation Canada team, and she will be speaking to us and giving us an update since her last chat with us, all about what's been happening with loggerhead shrike. So that's January. But that's next month and the month after. Tonight we're here to hear from Natasha Barlow from Birds Canada. So Natasha is the project lead for Birds Canada's Gardening for Birds initiative. Thanks, Natasha, for that. She completed her master's fieldwork in Wyoming, working to conserve grassland and shrubland birds in an area dominated by oil and gas development. The nature of her work has made her appreciate the unique opportunities that come with balancing human needs and wildlife protection. She believes that by connecting individuals to the world of birds, it can spark a passion for creating wildlife habitat in our own backyards, facilitating that balance between human needs and habitat protection. So with that being said, let's put our hands together for Natasha, and over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And before I did my master's, I actually worked with Jen Basie in British Columbia. We were doing work on yellow-breasted chats, and that's kind of when she started getting into birds. So that's a pretty funny small world. But Jen's amazing. Highly recommend coming to the next talk. She does some pretty incredible work. And also, I also just downloaded Discord, and looks like I might be working early tomorrow, so I can go potentially see that Harris's sparrow tomorrow. So you might be seeing me around tomorrow if anyone's going out.
And
but
thirdly, this is not your first time with the bird study group meeting, so I'll turn my camera off, I'll turn my mic off, and I'll leave the rest over to you.
Yeah, it's can everyone, well, give me a thumbs up, Jackson, if you can just see the title slide. Perfect. Yeah, so people unfortunately may recognize me from 2 years ago. I talked to the Hamilton Naturalist Club after I defended my thesis, my master's thesis, about greater sage grouse and brewer's sparrow and habitat reclamation, oil and gas development, and that kind of stuff. And so gardening for birds seems like a little bit of a different kind of topic, but it is still very much related because it is about kind of rebuilding that habitat just on a smaller scale, but it is still effective. And so first and foremost, what is Birds Canada? I know, especially with Doug doing that shout out and other individuals, I'm assuming that people know who Birds Canada is, but we did recently change our name, even though I guess it also has been 2 years. Where has the past 2 years gone? From Bird Studies Canada to Birds Canada. And so we are an environmental, non-government, non-profit organization that really focuses on conserving wild birds through many different avenues, whether it's through sound science, on-the-ground action, innovative partnerships, public engagement, science-based advocacy. And we do really strive to be Canada's voice for birds. And that includes everyone from all backgrounds, everywhere. And this initiative of gardening for birds, it kind of came from a passion of my coworker who saw gardening as a way to recreate that habitat in our own backyards for birds and other wildlife. Because like I was saying about my master's, we do often hear about that kind of large scale restoration efforts, but it doesn't need to be large scale. Your front yard, that can be a really incredible haven for birds that are maybe traveling to and from their northern boreal breeding grounds, or just residents that keep us busy year round, which is why Birds Canada, we are fairly passionate about giving kind of everyone those tools to help birds at their own home. And so I'm currently sitting, speaking of my home, it's on, I'm a little bit west of Guelph, and I'm also sitting on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation of the Anishinaabe people. It includes Guelph and Southern Ontario, and it's situated on treaty land that has much rich Indigenous history. It's home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. And since there are so many different uses of plants, whether it's medicine, food, for us, or just wildlife, it's really amazing seeing different gardens in my area being grown with the intention of strengthening that local Indigenous communities through traditional gardening methods, and seeing these examples at different places like the University of Waterloo, the University of Guelph Arboretum, and other places. And so, speaking about different uses of plants, I'm curious, what do you think about when you see these photos? Do you think about species that you might see near home, like northern flickers that are taking shelter in a tree? Or maybe you see species like this Tennessee warbler that's taking a bath and rehydrating. Maybe you notice this isn't an adult male in breeding plumage, but it's fall, and thousands and thousands and thousands of birds have already made their way south during that long migration back to their southern overwintering grounds. And they could be using these water features in our yards for rehydrating before they were making that journey. And so to get us, kind of thinking, I have a question for the audience. So you can feel free to go ahead and think about this while I say it. What time of the year do you think this photo was taken? You can kind of look at it's the first question. So what season was this photo taken? I can't vote. So do you think it's in the summer with the greenery? Do you think that maybe because of the plumage, it's telling you something different about when it was? So go ahead and feel free to click on that option in the post. This photo, I'll give you a little hint. It is an American goldfinch, as it says on the slide. It was taken last year in the Long Point area, and it's feasting on some seed heads. So any guesses? Any guesses at all? I cannot vote, so feel free to share that.
I think this is the first time we've ever had a poll
Okay.
in a presentation. So hopefully on people's screens, a poll has popped up.
If not, go ahead and write it in the chat. If you think it's in the fall, tell me that. If not, feel free to just take a guess. Yeah, okay, here we go. Some people coming in. Wow, you guys, okay, I presented to a botanical group recently, and they didn't do as well as you guys are doing. So we have at least 3 answers, so we're going well. Fall, you guys are great. This was taken last September in the fall. It was taken on a species called cup plant, which is a really amazing species because we see the showy flowers, those yellow, beautiful flowers in the spring and summer, but clearly birds aren't using it for those petals, right? Like they're using it for those seed heads of the cone after those petals have already fallen off. And all of these photos are kind of showing birds that are making use of the different plants that features in our neighborhoods and in our backyards are using throughout the year in different seasons of the year in different regions in Canada. These photos show what could easily be your backyard, your outdoor space for you to enjoy, but also providing benefit for a variety of bird species, which is why we're here today to really talk about that conservation initiative, that movement that's literally meeting us at our doorsteps, which is gardening for birds. So why are we talking about gardening for birds? We're talking about gardening for birds because we hear all the time that nature is under threat. Many forests and grasslands and wetlands, they've been cleared, they've been fragmented or degraded to make way for different land uses, agriculture, infrastructure, other purposes. And that habitat loss is really causing species to decline globally. But it's not all doom and gloom. The really great news is that we can all help. You can help. You can use your outdoor spaces, whether they're large or small, to bring back some habitat for birds and other wildlife. And we can do this through gardening. In the Hamilton area, it's a really fantastic, interesting place on the shore of Lake Ontario where tens of thousands of birds, they might be making that journey south, although they already made it for the most part, around the lake so they don't have to go across the lake, and filtering through your backyards, using your backyards, acting as those safe havens for these birds before they're continuing on their migration, as well as providing habitat for those resident birds or birds like dark-eyed junco that are visiting us right now. This photo shows a yellow warbler in spring during its annual migration back to us from its overwintering grounds. And if you look at the map on the bottom right, if you haven't seen this before, these are eBird abundance maps. If you look at the different colors on the map, those darker areas, dark purple, those are higher relative abundance or higher number of birds. Yellow is the opposite, not as many birds. If you look at week of the year and JFM, these denote months, so January, February, March. So in January, you can see that yellow warblers are down south enjoying the warmth and the food. But if I play this, you can see that, as we know, come April and May, they're starting to make this huge migration north to their breeding grounds that essentially cover all of Canada. And then they're migrating back down south in that winter and in the fall. So when we think about these huge, long, arduous journeys, imagine walking from Panama to Thunder Bay in a couple of months. That's exhausting. That is tiring. Imagine doing that with no food, no water. I would hope for free food, some shelter, some water, some resources, and we can provide those life-saving resources for those birds to help make it easier for them to make their journey so we can enjoy that diversity when they come back to us in the spring and summer. And when you start getting curious and creative about your outdoor space and you go to a plant nursery and you think, I could choose one of these plants or the other one, but one is good for birds and one not so much. We're really just trying to give you the tools for you to be able to decide, I'm going to buy this species of plant that's better for birds and can also help me have an attractive outdoor space. So you can create a space that's great for yellow warblers, that's great for Tennessee warblers, different species of woodpeckers, to increase the diversity at your own home and help them as well. So how do we do this? How do we actually garden for birds? By keeping three things at the forefront of your mind when you're planning your garden, it can really make a difference in a short amount of time, even if you're starting small. And shout out to Bill Davis, who is on the call for this amazing photo. But those three things are food, water, and shelter. And what we need to survive, birds do too. And we also need to think about this throughout the season, especially when we're getting into those colder months. So first and foremost, food, my favorite. Food can come in many different forms, which I'm also very thankful for. From the pine grosbeak that's eating the seeds or the keys of the green ash, to black and white warblers eating those insects, to species like Bohemian waxwings or cedar waxwings that are primarily frugivores. They eat fruit primarily in those colder months. We just suggest trying to incorporate native species that have naturally occurred in your region for years and years and years, because birds have coexisted with those native plants for so long that these native species can really help increase the insect diversity, for example, for food. But you don't have to remove all of your exotic species. Sometimes in a garden setting, we know that native plants can become fairly aggressive. And so we really just suggest trying to get curious about your outdoor space. Start adding some native diversity to your garden, and that would really just be a good start to help provide food that these birds have been accustomed to, their timing, when they fruit, when the insect pollinators are there, and they've co-evolved with that for a very long time. But it's not just about what they eat, it's when they eat. If we look at these pictures, they are taken at different times of the year. The pine grosbeak in the fall, black and white warbler in the spring and summer with that insect meal, and the fall and winter again for Bohemian waxwings. And thinking about, cones, seed heads, plants, keys that stick around in the fall and winter right now, after those flowers have come and gone, like the American goldfinch on the cup plant, we really suggest leaving the cleanup, if you can, until later in the spring. That can really help the birds have access to food and a diversity of food opportunities throughout the fall and winter. And so here is just a really, really kind of teaser clip. It's a quick video clip. It's actually a bonus scene for a series of 5 videos that we created that are on our YouTube channel or the Birds Canada website that talks about what we're talking about today, but with pretty imagery, bird songs, less talking heads like me. But this is just a bonus scene from that Greg from Work Cabin helped us create.
Here's an example of a hop tree that really holds its fruit late and is a wonderful source of food for cardinals in late winter.
So if you think about what sticks around, cones, seed heads, keep those for the birds, keep those for other wildlife. They need it at this time of year. And I am definitely not an expert gardener by any means. So we've enlisted the help of an expert horticulturalist, Kevin Kavanaugh, to give you some plant recommendations. And I'll do my best. I will absolutely do my best to talk about these plants. So thinking about if you're designing a hedgerow, for example, or a section in your yard where you want to have berries throughout the year, this grouping could work for you. Service berries, like roundleaf serviceberry, which fruits in the spring and summer. Dogwoods, like gray dogwood, that have a beautiful pink stem, contrasting with those beautiful white berries in the summer and fall. And then thinking about what species of plants hold on to their fruit later into those colder months. American mountain ash, for example, in the fall and winter. So thinking about planting plants in a way that helps you provide food year-round for birds and other wildlife, it'll increase the color and interest in your own backyard and possibly increase the diversity of species that you could see near your home while providing food for them during those harsher, colder months. And similarly, many birds eat insects and some like nectar, like our hummingbirds. Wild columbine blooming in spring, making way for that bright orange butterfly milkweed in the summer, and then transitioning to those yellow flowers for pollinators in the fall. That sounds like a pretty beautiful garden setup to me, honestly. And that also helps birds year round. So it can be a diverse garden for you and a diverse garden for birds. So on to our next crucial life-saving resource, water. Incorporating a water feature into your garden, it's a really great way to attract more birds, regardless of size or type. Anything from a small bird bath to a pond can really help. It's really important, especially in the spring and summer, to try to keep that water cool and clean, either through a filtration system if you're really keen, or just change the water and scrub it if you have a bird bath. So answer in the chat. That's how we'll do this. I have another question for you. Anyone want to try identifying this bird? So feel free to type your answers in the chat. I'll give you another hint. This was taken this year in September in Southern Ontario near the Long Point, Turkey Point area. It's a migratory species. So go ahead and feel free to answer in the chat. I will give you another hint. It is a warbler, although it might not be what some individuals like to look at. You know, usually we're looking at those really bright adult male plumage as a hint. So this is indeed a female black-throated blue warbler, or a black-throated blue warbler juvenile. So you can really see this is just a very simple bird bath with like some porous elements so they can climb out of the bird bath. If your bird bath is really deep, put some rocks in it so they can actually get out. But species like a black-throated blue warbler just popping into someone's backyard, that's pretty. Next question. This is a little bit harder. Any thoughts on what species this is? Same area, same bird bath, Long Point, Turkey Point area, Southern Ontario. We get these species in Hamilton. You can kind of look at those little bit of white on those tail feathers, overall yellow body with a little bit of black on the sides. So any thoughts at all? This is also a migratory species. If you're more of a sound birder, you could think of it being saying like sweeter, sweeter, sweetest, I think is the mnemonic. So that is great. Yes, this is a Magnolia warbler, Maggie. Again, another migratory warbler just taking a dip, rehydrating in a bird bath. So I have a coworker, Andreas, who lives in Toronto, and we were doing a recording for a podcast. The Warbler is the podcast, and we were talking about these similar concepts, and he was like, guys, it works. Like, he is in a tiny, like, suburban area, and he just put a bird bath out, and he's had like red starts and like just a variety of birds just popping in. Birds need water, so if you bring it to them, they will come. So when we think about water in kind of a natural setting, they can come in many different forms. And hopefully you can resonate with some of these photos. Maybe they look like an element in your neighborhood, or maybe they look like up north where you visited. Maybe in places along shorelines, anything from treed wetlands, swamps, open lakes. All of these things are really important for birds, and they are important for us too. They filter our drinking water, they help with flood retention, and they reduce the likelihood of floods. And incorporating that water feature into your garden, it's a really, really, really great way to attract some more birds. Regardless of size or type, it can be a little bird bath. The middle one of the blue jay and the bottom right of the chipmunk is the same bird bath as well. And so you can have a diversity, whether it's a stream, whether it's a pond, whether it's a little bit of a bird bath, to really give them an option to rehydrate or bathe as they're making that migratory trek. If you do add a bird bath though, make sure they don't become a stalking ground for outdoor cats, because that's not going to really go well for anyone. And wet areas, they do provide for options for other plants to grow, to enjoy more of those saturated conditions. And you can even plant these near your bird bath to kind of almost like emulate kind of a wetter area for birds. I've had a little bit of many troubles planting species that are working in kind of a wetter area that we have on our home. But some species do well in those conditions. And there are many of those that I have not killed, which is a fantastic suggestion. Anything from herbaceous species like cardinal flowers, absolutely beautiful, beautiful, beautiful flower. If I can plant a cardinal flower and it's doing well in those wetter conditions, you definitely can too. And next year, I am hoping to really plant a lot of these shrubs, especially the ones in the middle, especially button bush, because it looks incredible. Look at those flowers. And it also takes a lot of that water up and uses that. So they do really, really well in those wetter conditions. So planting these, if you do have the opportunity, go for it. We have a variety of other recommendations we'll get to in a little bit, but try to, build up the habitat around those wetter areas so species have a safer place to go to the bird bath, and then go into those shrubs for a little bit of shelter. And speaking about shelter, birds might choose specific habitat features to avoid detection from predators or for protection from the elements. So to increase their safety and decrease their detectability, we can provide shelter in the form of trees for this adorable little ruby-throated hummingbird, or clusters of shrubs for this swamp sparrow, or even more dense ground cover. I wouldn't suggest necessarily grass cover, but other forms of ground cover for species that nest on the ground. This can really allow for birds to move more safely during migration, forage within their home range, defend their territory, and provide sheltered habitat where they can safely nest or roost throughout the year. And if we are thinking about that savanna sparrow nest that I just showed, we know that some species prefer to nest on the ground, but some species are preferring to nest or forage in those treetops. Some bird species, they might have specific habitat preferences at certain times of the year and others at other times. Some species, if you think of species like cerulean warblers, right? You get that warbler neck just staring at them at the tops of those trees. But then you have things like swamp sparrows that prefer to be a little bit more secretive in those shrubs, while others like eastern towhees, they nest on the ground, they're using that dense ground cover. So think about building structure from the ground up. If we think about how forests develop naturally, they develop in those same layers. The forest floor, and then you have those understory trees and shrubs, and then those really, really, really tall trees. And an outdoor space with that kind of same structural diversity, including that variety of native plant species, those various heights, that can really cater to the differences in habitat preferences among different species. If you think less lawn, more garden, that can really help when designing your outdoor space for wildlife. we know that heavily manicured lawns, they require frequent mowing, chemical treatments, costly maintenance. That can all be reduced in size just to create an attractive yard with lower maintenance requirements for us that also provides habitat for wildlife. And also adding some interesting, tasteful elements to your garden, which may or may not be a personal choice, that can really increase the diversity of the spot. Differences in branching density. Maybe you have some areas that are open so birds can see and defend their territory. Or maybe you have some more clustered shrubs where they feel more secretive and protected. Or things that aren't as heavily manicured, like dust baths or brush piles or logs. Think about, say, an eastern towhee foraging and nesting on the ground, and then jumps up on that stump to kind of look for predators, and then goes into the shrub to avoid detection. That structural diversity is really important for birds throughout their life cycles. And you can kind of look around your neighborhoods and say, okay, my neighbor has maybe some shady trees, and maybe I can't have a sun-loving pollinator garden, but maybe I'm going to transition that more into a forest garden and to build something like this. Or maybe you want to add to their diversity or add to the neighboring green space or agricultural field. So really just think about adding that diversity in your yard based on the habitat mosaic of your neighborhood could also really help. So planting from the bottom up, we know that there are not a lot of other options other than grass for ground cover. These specifically are recommendations for more shady environments, thinking about that forest cover, but having species like wild ginger, for example, which you can also see has a rock in the background and some of that leaf litter, adding some of that diversity to your garden, and the forest or the garden floor. So thinking about those same layers and building up from the ground, you get some of those understory shrubs, service berries again, amazing, amazing species, as well as spice bush. And then those taller trees. And we do suggest at least having some conifers, if you can, to provide for some year-round coverage. But we do suggest making a plan first. I've heard stories of people who just go and buy plants when they didn't really consider where to plant them, which is fine. But if you get curious about your outdoor space first, you get to know your soil conditions, get to know how much moisture your soil is holding. Are there areas of your garden that has full sun throughout the day, or maybe it's a little bit more shaded? If you plan out your area, you can have a small water feature in one area. You can maybe have a conifer corner, some shorter shrubs, some native herbaceous species. And so making that plan first makes it easier for you to kind of envision what you want your outdoor space to look like, while also having the added benefit of planning for birds. And I, as a relatively new homeowner, am trying to jump the gun a little bit too much with wanting to plan things ASAP because I'm worried it's going to take a long time to come back. But in general, what we want to develop and what I want to develop is a structurally, aesthetically interesting garden, because lawns are lacking biologically, because there isn't really much that can survive on a lawn. But imagine that you're standing on the other side of this fence. Imagine you're looking in at the guys, a lawn that in 1 year turned into this. I'm not lying. This beautiful garden used to be that lawn in 1 year. The life here is incredible. It's so loud with pollinators and birds and mammals, you name it. And this can happen for you too. And this is what I'm really hoping to happen for me as well. This site, our expert horticulturalist, Kevin Kavanagh, this is one of his clients. It's an amazing location in the Long Point area. And this can happen in a year. Build it and they will come, honestly. So say you have a plan. What do you plant? Well, do you live anywhere on this map? Because if you do, we have plant recommendations for you, specifically for the Hamilton area, to really make sure that it's based on your garden environment to help you make your yard bird friendly. And so with Kevin's guidance, the expert horticulturalist that we partnered with, we came up with a way to kind of break up Canada into what we call bird garden zones. Number 1, you can see, is all the way in the Yukon. Number 22 is the island of Newfoundland. These bird garden zones, they take into cold hardiness zones. What cold hardiness are these plants going to endure? Different ecoregions, climate, geography, bird diversity regions. And Kevin has really combined all of that information to create bird garden zones. So with that in mind, maybe you're in zone number 16 in the Hamilton region, or maybe you're a little bit outside of that. I'm a little bit outside of that. I'm a little bit in Guelph, so I'm in zone 17. But if you are actually in close proximity to 2 or more zones, you might actually have the opportunity to plant species from multiple zones. And with climate change, these rough boundaries, they might change too. But for now, if you are in the zone 16 or 17 area, that's something to keep in mind. Birdgardens.ca, it's Bird Canada's new resource to really help you help birds and help me help birds, because I am definitely not an expert gardener. It's a website dedicated entirely to giving you information on how to plan your garden, what to think about when designing your outdoor space, while giving you kind of that regionally tailored specific information to help you select native, naturally occurring plants to help birds. The plant selector that we have, there's over 500 native species that covers all of Canada and the northern US. And it really allows you to create that kind of customized plant list based on your garden environment, based on what plant type you're looking for, what bird garden zone you're in, what kind of sun, soil, and moisture conditions. We also have subcategories of what wildlife features you're looking for. Do you want to provide cones or nectar or berries, and what seasons do you want to do that for? So on birdgardens.ca, we essentially have our 3-step process for gardening for birds, in addition to some kind of introductory information that we've also touched on today, as well as those 5 videos that you got a little bit of a bonus on earlier in the presentation. So the first step, again, is really making that plan. It's important to get curious about your outdoor space. What are the different sun, soil, moisture conditions in different areas of your yard? And also we want people to think about kind of that seasonal and structural diversity throughout the years. Second, what is your bird garden zone, which is step 2. So maybe you can look at this and you can say, okay, I'm located in the Hamilton area. It looks like I'm in zone number 16, but I might be a little bit closer to zone 17. So if you can locate yourself on our static maps, that's great. But if you are a little bit close to some areas and you need more of a fine-grained tool, you can click on our interactive map, which you can type in your postal code. You can just click on the map. You can use your device's GPS to kind of pinpoint your location, and it'll tell you what bird garden zone you're in. So the interactive map looks something like this. And I just did this this recording like a couple hours ago. You can type in your address, you can type in a place name. I'm glad we were talking about the Royal Botanical Gardens because it is the example I use. It's a great birding spot. So you type it in and it pulls up your zone name, your zone number, and a link to your full plant list. So once you memorize that specific is in zone 16, you navigate to our plant selector. And I'll also note that you can feel free to look at the additional resources tab, which includes 2-page fact sheets, the really quick fact sheets for each bird garden zone across Canada, and a quick list of 10 plants that we recommend planting that may work in your area based on your garden environment. But once you've memorized your bird garden zone number, you can navigate to the plant selector page, which is honestly where the fun happens. So this example is going to show you just a really quick tutorial, but a longer tutorial can be viewed if you click on that how to use the plant selector option. It's a video of me talking, apologies. You're going to have to work through that a little bit with me if you just kind of need a refresher after this demonstration. So say that you've found that you're located near zone number 16, but you're also kind of on the boundary of zone number 17. And say that you're looking for, I don't know, say a shrub. So you can click on that shrub subcategory. This database of 500 plants will live filter based on everything that you're collecting. Scroll down. I'm in zone number 16, go ahead and click that, but I'm also close to zone number 17. So maybe I'll click that as well and just see what happens. You can scroll down, you can punch in your sun. Maybe there's areas of full sun in your garden. Maybe you're looking for areas that have kind of sandy clay or, sandy soil, not clay. And it's a little bit dry, but some of that is actually being held. So it's a little bit moist, but it is well drained. Maybe you're looking specifically for a small shrub. You don't want it overarching next to your house. You don't really care if it's evergreen or deciduous, but you are interested in kind of fall and winter berries or drupes. There are a variety of other wildlife features that you're welcome to click. Maybe you're looking for spring or summer berries or drupes. Maybe you're looking for a plant that flowers in the summer. So again, once you've live filtered that, you can scroll up and these are all of your options. So maybe you're happy with these options, but you want to learn a little bit more about the plant. Let's look at black chokeberry. Looks like a really pretty plant. You can click on that. You can scroll down. You can look at some other photos. It looks like a pretty cute flower. You can scroll down even more. And then this is all of the information that we have available to you. It's a shrub, what type of sun, soil, and moisture. It can also apparently exist in dry all the way to wet conditions, so it seems fairly versatile. It's a small shrub. I know that we only clicked fall and winter berries and drupes, but it clearly also provides flowers for insect pollinators. Once you're happy with that information and you think it'll be able to grow in your environment, you can click add that yellow heart and it'll add it to your list, kind of like an online shopping list. And then once you click your list, you can see that it's added. You can copy that to that share link. You can email it to yourself. You can text it to yourself. You can print this page off to bring it to the nursery. I have so many plants on my personal list, and I use it to first select which plants are actually going to be able to potentially grow in my area. And then I also save that list and I return back to it when I'm actually going to plant them. So as a refresher of, okay, I have 30 species of plants and I don't remember why I chose them. And then I can quickly go through and it just tells me, okay, this one goes in a full sun, wet environment. So it's a really, really handy way. We also just created a local nursery map. So wherever you are in Canada, we have an interactive map similar to finding your bird garden zone. So you can click on that to find a local nursery near you. And we're always looking for suggestions on other ones to add. And gardening is a really fantastic way to kind of recreate habitat at our own doorsteps. But there are other things in tandem or doing all on their own that we can really do to help birds, especially now that we're getting into those colder months. And with that in mind, though, I do know landscapers that have planted all the way until the end of November. So it might be too late. We just got hit with a lot of snow here in Guelph. I'm not sure if you guys did too. But ideally, if you can get, those trees and those shrubs into the ground 6 weeks before the ground completely freezes, that's kind of the way to go. But if that's not really an option now, there are definitely other things that we can do to help birds. So thinking about glass mirrors and windows, and you might have heard this before. I saw that, I think last year you had a presentation by Michael Majeur with Flap. And hearing, that thud of a bird on a window, that's really painful to hear, let alone for the bird. And it's completely avoidable. So using window tape, those little dots to break up that reflection so birds don't fly into those windows, it's ideal. But there's other inexpensive options too that have worked around Canada, like purchasing an oil-based Sharpie. I purchased one of these and my husband is way more artistic than I am. By that, I mean, I don't have any creativity whatsoever. And this is absolutely not our artwork. This is actually a screenshot taken from the University of British Columbia, where essentially they just drew on the windows. And when my husband and I were living in Woodstock, he drew on the outside of our balcony windows to kind of reduce that reflection so birds didn't fly through it. So there are some inexpensive options as well. And we also do suggest avoiding adding glass or mirrors to gardens. It might look nice to humans, but not so much the birds. And this can be an issue if it's reflecting or if it's looking like they can fly through it, because that's not really a great idea for birds. But consumer choices are another option as well. I don't personally drink coffee, but basically everyone else that I know does. And so buying that bird certified friendly coffee from growers, especially those with the certification from the Smithsonian Institute, can really ensure that those beautiful migrants that we're really appreciating in spring and summer, when they go back to their overwintering grounds, they're not losing their habitat or clear-cut coffee plantations. And so thinking about forestry as well, forestry products like the Forest Stewardship Council, they're more sustainably certified. They have Indigenous consultation, and it's just a really great way to really help ensure that there is continued habitat for birds. Artificial nest and roosting structures as well. It's providing the kind of additional structure from shelter from the elements or predation, and especially getting into those colder months. We might not have that huge explosion of winter finches this year as we did last year, but I mean, I've already seen reports of crossbills as we do annually, so maybe we'll get some in our backyards too. And so Project Feeder Watch is actually kicking off right now, so feel free to visit birdscanada.org if you want to kind of turn your backyard bird watching hobby into conservation action. And lastly, indoor cats. My supervisor, he is a cat lover and a bird lover, and he's also rescued cats and from being outdoors, and they've adapted absolutely perfectly to indoor life. He really just says, if you give your cats a lot of love and exercise, they'll do just fine. So we're making sure they're safe indoors, and we're making sure they're not eating birds outdoors, which is great. And this is his cat, Tigger. There is some bird reflective netting over top of this, but Tigger did make a cameo, a catio in our video series, so feel free to check that out. He did a great job. But if you kind of want to know where to find some of the things that we've just talked about, you can head over to birdscanada.org. We just put out a holiday guide just detailing other organizations and other places where you can actually purchase some of those things, not for us, but for them. So things like Bird Inspired Yard, or the Birds Canada calendar, again, that bird-friendly coffee, Birds and Beans, it runs out of Etobicoke, Project Feeder Watch, or even like that bird-friendly window tape. I'm very much going to buy some soon, and also some bird jewelry. If you have people that you want to buy for, it seems like Birds Canada has also partnered with some Etsy shops this year for the holiday, which is really great. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for being kind of willing to learn about how we can use our outdoor spaces for the benefit of birds, wildlife, and also us. And outdoor space that's good for birds, it doesn't mean that it can't be beautiful. It can easily be both. Just think about food, water, shelter. How do we provide this throughout the fall and winter, into those colder months, and also throughout the year? And as I said previously, my partner and I, we are very excited to kind of change our lawn-dominated home that the previous homeowner had into more of a bird-friendly area. And we're really happy to help you along and as we kind of go through that journey together. I also want to give a special mention to Wild Birds Unlimited, who has supported this work. And they not only provide like bird feeders, but they're really interested in finding different ways, including gardening for birds, to kind of save the songbirds as a whole. So that's it for me, and I'm happy to try to take as many questions as I can.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I just started following you on Instagram, so thanks for sharing that account, as well as the other bird studies group, the Birds Canada tags, because we want more people constantly observing and thinking about that. So so great. Thank you so much. There are a few questions already, which is great, and I have some as well. So Susan says, can you speak to birds bathing in winter in bird baths? Allow or keep rocks in it so they can only drink? What are your thoughts on that?
So if you think about species like common redpolls or hoary redpolls, they will, if there's open water, they will be there in the frigid temperatures of February. And so if there is open water, they will go to it. And so I know a lot of keen backyard birders, they might have those heated bird baths. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing. Again, just you can put small rocks into it. Like I said previously, where they don't necessarily have to get stuck at the bottom in the water. And so they have an avenue to get out if they can. And so, yeah, if you're able to keep that open water open, they know what to do. Some, great blue herons will stay. I mean, you're not going to have a great blue heron in your bird bath, but like some of them stay around until like late November until it freezes. And so, yeah, I think they know what to do for the most part.
Awesome. So thanks, Susan, for asking. There's both the chat and the Q&A, so feel free to put questions in either. Daphne wonders, how high is it safe for birds to hang a feeder? I live on the 8th floor and have a fair sized balcony.
Yeah, that's great. I was on, what was I on? Like the 5th floor, and honestly, I didn't get feeders at, I think I got one house finch, and it was a glorious day, but they never came back. And so there's definitely no guarantee that they may visit that. But at the same time, it's not just about feeders on a balcony. I know, like Gregor and Kevin, my coworker, and the expert horticulturalist that we partnered with, I think Kevin made his balcony, which was very, very high, into just a garden. And he had a variety of pollinators. And so it's not just about the direct benefit to birds of providing habitat. It is also about, if you're on a balcony and you're able to have plants in gardens, in pots or otherwise, to increase the native insect diversity, that can also really indirectly help birds because you're increasing food diversity. And so I'm not going to say that you'll 100% get birds on your 8th floor balcony, but there are other opportunities to garden for birds.
A distinguished gentleman of the Naturalist Club, Warren Beecham, has said, just a note, Kevin and Gregor have done great work for us at our Spooky and Short Hills nature sanctuaries. So those two names are synonymous with the HNC, so that's great.
Yeah, they're both very passionate, amazing conservationists. I'm very lucky to learn from both of them.
Amazing. Rose Peterson says, I would like to see some effort in making roofs a green space, not only for birds, but for insects, as well as for conservation of heat and or cool for the inside of the buildings. Green roofs, do you have any thoughts on that, Natasha?
Not so much thoughts. I just say ditto. I think that's great. Yeah, it would be, there are so many different opportunities. And I think with enough interest by communities and municipalities, I think we have an opportunity to do something big. And that's kind of why, gardening for birds, it's not just about those huge landscapes. It is about thinking of balconies. It is about thinking of green roofs. I think that's a great opportunity. If we have traction on that, I think that would be great as a, community grass-led movement. There were some in the additional resources tab on the website. We do list kind of third-party resources that have been audited across Canada for more external information. I don't necessarily think there's stuff about green roofs there, but I do know in my search that there have been some other organizations. I'm blanking on where to find them now, but there are external resources on how to create them if that is something that you're interested in looking at.
Awesome. I do have a question that I'm waiting to all the participants until I get through these questions and comments before I ask one of mine. So maybe we'll come back to that. Kathy has a comment. The Greenbelt Coffee in Hamilton sells bird-friendly birds and beans coffee. They deliver as well.
Perfect.
So thank you, Kathy, for that. Greenbelt Coffee. Okay, so this is a question put in the Q&A. I've read that human-built bird feeders can have an impact on birds, spread disease, for example. Therefore, I'm looking to exchange my backyard bird feeders for native sources of food. In terms of native sunflower species, which seeds provide the best nutritional value? Are there any other seed sources beside trees that will persist through the winter?
Great question. I will answer this as best as I can because unfortunately I'm not Kevin right now. Yeah, there has definitely been discussions about whether bird feeders, whether they're seed feeders or they're even nectar feeders, like Anna's hummingbirds in British Columbia, kind of have that artificial food source, and so they're staying around much later than they potentially might otherwise. Whether or not that's an issue has been a question, but I think generally the overall consensus is the birds that are relying on the seeds and bird feeders, they do generally need it. And if you are able to supplement that or provide an alternative native food source, of course, highly recommend that's the way to go. If you're not able to do that, providing bird food as well as kind of keeping to that schedule of cleaning your feeders to ensure that you're not spreading diseases, that's really important. And so in terms of Project Feeder Watch or anything that Birds Canada promotes in terms of, feeders, we very much recommend that you keep to that kind of strict cleaning schedule, because there have been outbreaks, I think last year in pine siskins in BC, and there are a variety of diseases that can be spread around in feeders because these birds are coming to they're congregating to an area which some species in the numbers and the quantity and the different diversity of species wouldn't otherwise. And so there are hazards with providing bird feeders, but the flip side of that is generally birds are struggling. Generalists, not so much, but there are birds that are struggling, and providing a reliable food source, whether it's a native plant or otherwise, birds will quickly add that to their route across, in your neighborhood. And that's kind of like a consistent food source that they can look for. Hopefully that answered your question the first time. Basically, you can provide bird feeders, clean them, make sure you're doing that rigorously to ensure that disease is not spread. Native food sources is definitely the alternative if you can. In terms of native sunflower seeds, I do not know, and I will be honest with that. I am not sure which seeds provide the best nutritional value. But in terms of seed sources that do persist throughout the winter, definitely, you can, like I have black-eyed Susan that still have seeds, and they likely will have them throughout the winter. You can essentially on birdgardens.ca, you can search for small seeds as a wildlife feature option, and a lot of those will persist. Of course, if you only have one plant and it gets devoured by white-throated sparrows, maybe not. But if you do have a diversity of seed opportunities and seed like a larger garden, less lawn, more garden, then it's not just trees, but it is very much your herbaceous species and your shrubs that can provide that throughout the year.
Amazing. Thank you so much. There's a contentious issue when it comes to feeding wild birds not on your property. I know that there's people who regularly feed bread and various other sources of food to wildlife. And there have been, a lot of efforts lately to try and curb people from feeding wild birds in public or in spaces that aren't your property. We don't necessarily have to get into that too much, but if you join Discord today, you might notice a conversation occurring about the Harrison sparrow and setting up a feeder there. Now, I don't want to, encourage any negative comments regarding that particular bird or what's occurring there. But what do you say to folks who have been feeding birds on the trail, in certain spots? Do you have any suggestions, or does Birds Canada have any thoughts about feeding wild birds in public spaces?
Yeah, I'm honestly not sure. I don't know as an organization, so I won't speak as Birds Canada. I'll speak personally. I did not see that conversation, so this will be just kind of winging it at this point, pun intended. I don't know. I think that it's hard because vagrants like the Harrison sparrow, they'll come by annually, and it kind of just is what it is. And I think if we're going to focus on why vagrants happen, they happen naturally, but there also might be underlying causes of climate change, which is, relatively human induced at this point. And so I think we kind of have a responsibility to help when we can, but at the same time, you kind of also just have to let nature do its own thing. I personally would not recommend, baiting. When it comes to baiting, that's a little bit separate than stationary feeding. but yeah, I don't really have any strong comments on it. I think I'd
That's
have to
great.
think about that a little bit longer.
Yeah, no worries. Again, I'm learning. I'm a hobbyist when it comes to birds, and I know that when RBG, for example, started putting up signage asking to not feed the birds, there was a lot of people, well, this is our favorite pastime. This is a great way to connect with birds. When people visit, we bring them down, and it's such a beautiful moment. And I've witnessed it. I've taken people out on hikes. I've passed out seeds. We've stood there
Mm-hmm.
and we've hand fed birds, and watching people's eyes light up when a chickadee or a nuthatch or a woodpecker lands on their hand, like that's a huge moment. So then when the signs started going out, that really stressed a lot of people out. And I think it's kind of closely connected to what this project is that you're doing, where it's just messaging, trying to influence people to ensure that you're doing the right thing, and doing something that is greater or more beneficial to the greater good. Because yeah, one person feeding two people can quickly turn into 20, 40, 80, hundreds, ongoing daily, weekly thing. Like it really can snowball into something much greater. So that's awesome. Now, what I wanted to ask you was, again, kind of the next steps, right? So we're hearing a lot with climate change that we have been, I shouldn't say duped, but like making people think that as individuals we should be doing more, we should be doing all these things, when really it's bigger organizations that ought to be stepping up to the plate more so than the average individual. This campaign of bird gardens and bird friendly gardens, like I am on board with. So my question more so is, what are your thoughts on like municipalities, on cities, on parks? Is there an effort, do you think, to be bringing this to bigger landscapes, the next steps beyond people?
That would be great. I think you're very right, but in terms of like consumer versus like organizational responsibility, that's a whole other conversation. And I would kind of say it's the magic of and with that, right? Like we can do both. Like organizations can be held responsible for the climate impact, and the biggest land cover essentially in residential areas in North America is lawn, which has essentially zero biological value. And so from a personal landowner perspective, that is, I mean, theoretically, if everyone gets on board, that's a huge chunk of land that can be brought back to a little bit of nature. And so I think we do still have that opportunity and the responsibility to do what we can. In terms of kind of the next steps, I think I've had one landscaping company actually personally reach out to me to ask about the resource, which I think is fantastic. And I think it is becoming more mainstream in Ontario. I think it needs to branch out a little bit more in terms of like different province and territories, but it is getting there. And so and unfortunately, I think that also comes back to the consumer, and it comes back to us, right? Like if we're going to if we're going to nurseries and we're buying plants and we're requesting native plants, and not I'll say, there are cultivars and nativars and whatever, but and kind of just being aware of that. Like red osier dogwood is a great plant. You can literally plant it anywhere and it's amazing. But a lot of nurseries are selling it as red osier dogwood, but it's red twig dogwood from Korea, which has essentially zero wildlife benefit here. And so being kind of an advocate and going to these nurseries and like just wanting it, we can personally increase that demand for wanting those native species too. And then I think that's kind of how it gets a little bit more mainstream. So in terms of next steps, I think that would be amazing. It's definitely a time and a financial thing of, if we're able to do that, but getting this resource out to landowners was definitely our primary option. And hopefully we go from there. It just launched this year. And so Fingers crossed. I would love to see all landscaping companies like taking out whatever. You don't have to remove all your exotic species, but
I don't know.
you know.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's the perfect grassroots step with this kind of campaign, is with people and encouraging others to do this. I know that, nurseries and landscape companies, like they're next to the table. I was driving today and I noticed 3 different companies and just backpack blowers galore, just blowing leaves out of gardens. And I kind of cringed at each sighting, and I was just like, oh my gosh. And you see all the campaigns of Leave the Leaves, and I know the Naturalist Club have, that messaging. You're right, it is getting started, and that is growing. And then when you see it happening, it's like, oh geez. And obviously not everyone is going to be keeping the leaves in their gardens. But yeah, I do wish you the most of luck with this campaign going forward, and really appreciate you being here tonight. A couple more comments have just come through. I have a concern for nurseries that continue to sell plants listed as invasive plants in Ontario. Susan, you and me both. Natasha, thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard. And it is hard. Like, I moved into a place there's 3 burning bush outside, which are not native. They're actually being banned in some states. And so I will take those out. But they're beautiful. But there are, like, Eastern Wahoo is a native alternative. And so this resource is really just making people kind of aware of that. I'll also note too that some noxious weeds, like milkweeds, for example, are also kind of listed, which we know are very beneficial to butterflies. And so it really just comes down to the landowner. Like, maybe you're not able to leave the leaves, which is fine, but maybe you want to go to a nursery and talk about invasive species. Maybe you want to plant swamp milkweed or whatever. But yeah, it's definitely interesting, and it's really just about education, and change takes time. So we'll just do our best.
Yeah, and we'll keep working together because you're not alone here in the chat tonight. A team effort is needed, I think, forevermore. It always has been, but the more we know, the more we have a bit of a duty, and probably speaking to the converted here already tonight, but still always room for more. So Rose Peterson said there's a great book years ago about planting your front and back gardens to make a complete landscape across a community for wildlife and getting rid of grass. There are lots of resources out there, and I think a great first step was Natasha's cute dog with the toy in its mouth, but also just going to birdgardens.ca and continuing to support great organizations like Birds Canada. And Natasha, what's next for you? What does your winter look like? What does your 2022 look like? Can you share anything before we wrap up here?
Yeah, definitely. I was also going to say that book, it might be written by an individual called Doug Tallamy. He is a pretty big name in kind of this renaturalizing thing. So just a name, Doug Tallamy, if you want to check out his information. What's next for me? Well, I I moved from doing boreal work to which also kind of ties into this, because we're talking about full life cycle of birds. It's not just breeding and overwintering grounds. But I am going to be taking on more of Birds Canada's aerial insectivore project. So you can stay tuned for updates from me, whether you're on Swift Watch or you're interested in aerial insectivores. You can plant those plants for insects. Aerial insectivores are the bird group that is declining the fastest in North America. So keep them in mind when you're planting your plants for pollinators. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep doing this outreach. We can still do stuff in the fall and winter for gardening for birds. It's not just about the pretty flowers in the spring and summer. So that's it for me.
Awesome. Doug Tallamy, Bringing Nature Home is one of those books. Heather Holmes' book on pollinators of native plants is good. Yeah, tons of resources, lots of stuff to continue this conversation. So feel free to like or subscribe to anything from Birds Canada. You're an amazing organization. I love all the work that you do. So keep up the great work, Natasha, and to all of your colleagues. It really is honorable stuff. So keep it up. Caterpillars of Eastern North America to feed nesting birds. Thank you, Susan. Yeah, it's great.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, thanks again on behalf of the Naturalist Club and the Bird Studies group. We'd love to have you back sometime down the road. So when you do get another presentation, look our way because we'd love to have you or any of your colleagues. But yes, thank you so much.
Perfect. Thanks. I hope everyone can garden for birds. I'll be doing it too. We'll help each other out.
And that's it for us today, folks. It's 10 to 9, so enjoy the rest of your Monday evening. We'll see you at the general meeting next month or the next bird study group meeting. Natasha, everybody, stay safe.
Thanks.
Take care. Thanks all.